The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Glory to you, O Lord. Some Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came to Jesus and put this question to him, saying, "Teacher, Moses wrote for us, if someone's brother dies, leaving a wife but no child, his brother must take the wife and raise up descendants for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first married a woman and died, leaving no descendants. So the second brother married her and died, leaving no descendants. And the third likewise. And the 7 left no descendants. Last of all, the woman also died. At the resurrection, when they arise, whose wife will she be? For all 7 had been married to her." Jesus said to them, "Are you not misled because you do not know the Scriptures or the power of God? When they rise from the dead, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but they are like the angels in heaven. As for the dead being raised, have you not read in the book of Moses, in the passage about the bush, how God told him, 'I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob'? He is not God of the dead, but of the living. You are greatly misled." The Gospel of the Lord. Yeah, it's a great gospel passage, especially if you like a little bit of confrontation. You know, it's Jesus and the Sadducees. But I know, just a word on Tobit. I mean, the book starts out so lighthearted. Tobit getting pooped in the eyes by the birds, and it just gets serious. It gets serious there. But you got to enjoy that. I had to say pooped in the eye. I just sorry. It's a thing. Okay, so. Yeah, no, it's a great book. In fact, I want to do a Bible study on it. So, at least 1 week on the poop in the eye. So there's got to be something going on there. So, and I'm interested to find out what it is. So, but I think we read it in parallel. I think because of course the young lady who's married 7 times, right? And then we have the 7 times. So there is some parallel there, but it's pretty tangential. But we'll take it nonetheless. Yeah, here Jesus, I forgot to set the scene yesterday. Jesus, in this part of the Gospel of Mark, he's already had his triumphal entrance into Jerusalem, right? So it's like the crowd is already riled up, and they're ready to go for him. He's at the head of a revolutionary movement there. And of course, it's not the Pharisees' revolutionary movement, so they're upset with him. And the Sadducees are more of the kind of aristocracy of the day. They're very they're more the conservative part of things. They're quite okay with the way things are. Okay, so this is one of the reasons, at least, why they oppose the concept of resurrection. Because resurrection, at least the way that it's understood by a faithful first century Jew, and certainly the way that we understand it now, the resurrection is like it's the world being turned upside down. Yeah, and the Sadducees, because they're, at the top of the heap right now, they don't want it. They don't need that. They don't need that kind of thing, right? They don't want that kind of thing. They prefer things to be just the way they are. For instance, it's in some of the revolutionary movements. Again, we see in the book of Maccabees, right? The idea that the martyrs can give it all because God will return to them what otherwise they look like they're losing. In the resurrection, God will make this right. So do whatever you want to me, because God will make this right. And making it right means God will recover. I don't know. God will reclaim His good creation. That's what it means. And then, of course, the faithful people in it are exonerated and exalted, because they went with him the whole while. And of course, then they would be leaders of the setting things right era, as it were, because they led that movement when things were upside down. So of course they would be leaders of the pack as it related to God's new age. Now the Sadducees also they keep at arm's length more than that. They dispel what they consider to be, I guess, the myth of resurrection, or even they put down what's emerging as a doctrine of resurrection, not simply because they have something to lose, but also because, I mean, their defense of it is to say it's not included in the books of Moses. It's not included in the first 5 books of the Bible, and that's what we take to be authoritative, and what comes after that is like less and less authoritative. So if a first century Jew holds on to the idea of the resurrection because of the book of Daniel, the Sadducees dismiss it for exactly that same reason. It's in the book of Daniel. It's not part of sacred writ. It's not part of scripture, as it were. So and Jesus knows this, of course. Okay, so that's background on the Sadducees, and then the idea that Jesus has already entered Jerusalem in his triumphal entry. He enters Jerusalem at the head of his people. He enters Jerusalem as a would-be Messiah, right? As a would-be King of the Jews. He's in that position, right? So he's at the point of reference for all of these discussions. These are not just academic or intellectual discussions, or they're things of curiosity. No, these are real points of significance for someone who is claiming to be the Messiah, right? The anointed of God, the one who is to roll back Israel's enemies, right? To push off Israel's enemies and to restore Israel in the place that it was always intended to be, right? And of course, maybe above, I mean, they're chosen, right? It's a chosen nation, but chosen to bring God's blessing to life in the world. And this is where Jesus runs into all sorts of trouble with everyone at that time, because he knows what the true agenda of Israel is, right? He knows what he is the true Israel. Remember, vine and branches. He is the true Israel in the flesh, and it's his living God's life in their midst, his going the way of self-gift in their midst, his living to be a blessing to all peoples that recaptures the Israel agenda, properly speaking. But they don't want it. No one else wants it. Right? The Sadducees, they're fine. They're fine where they are. The Pharisees, if there's going to be a revolution, we want to lead the revolution. And it's going to be a revolution that we lead on our terms. And it's going to be an us versus them revolution. And that's not the revolution that Jesus is leading. And now he comes back in. And I think here, I should have started probably with resurrection, because there's more than enough there, but I'm not gonna dwell there for too long. Resurrection, yes. Let's look at what Jesus says. Yeah, Jesus talks about the dead being raised as the resurrection. Right? This is absolutely essential. Jesus is not saying. He says, for the dead being raised. When they rise from the dead, they neither marry nor are given in marriage. Okay, so when they rise from the dead, he's talking about a physical reality. So I want to make sure that we get this clear, what the resurrection is. The resurrection is a new bodily life after death. A new bodily life after death. Has the resurrection happened yet? No, except for Jesus. But we hold on to the resurrection happening as this new era of God's perfect rule. Now, Jesus rising from the dead in the middle of history means that we can make progress towards that place now, but we still await the resurrection in order to accomplish it perfectly. And the resurrection, in that sense, will coincide with Jesus' return, Jesus' second coming, right? So, okay, just to say the resurrection has not happened yet. I have to say it because I've been to funerals where priests have preached and said, about the person who's dead, and now that he's experiencing the resurrection. And I wanted to stand up and shout, his body is right there. His body is right there. He's clearly not risen from the dead, right? Now, so we have a concept of life after death. And it's somewhat obscure in the scriptures, but it's there. It's things like gathered to God or gathered around Jesus or that kind of thing. But we're not in the age of the resurrection yet. And we live as Christians, our hope is in life after death. Life after death, right? But life after that, the resurrection, that's what we live for. Because God's creation is good, right? A life after death, a disembodied reality, would be a negation of God's creation. This is what makes the resurrection here, and Jesus make it very forcefully so, this is what makes the resurrection so central in our faith and also in this discussion that he's having. And why, in fact, it points to how absolutely essential it is that Jesus himself is at the head of this new Israel movement, and he's the one who's gone through death and come out the other side. He's leading a resurrection movement. And this is what puts it on another level. Remember yesterday I said his movement transcends these movements, these political movements of the day. And this is how it transcends it. It's because he's going to lead his movement through death and out the other side. And he's leading us now with the strength of his own blessed life that he gives us to live beyond death now and to be agents of God's coming rule now, here and now. And that's supposed to be then the mission of the church, is to live for what we know, for what we know will be the case in that life after death reality. And here Jesus gives, when he says, I'm the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, he is not God of the dead, but of the living. Again, he's talking about the future reality. He's saying they were alive, they will be alive. Right? And so he is the God of the living, and the dead will rise. So, but here, okay, so take it all. I don't know. There's too much, I understand. But this is the resurrection reality. God's putting the world to rights, firmly, finally, and it's his whole creation. It's not an escape from creation. This is why Pope Francis is right when he criticizes us for being part of a throwaway culture. I mean, I don't know a thing about landfills, but I'm sure they're filling up by the day, right? Just the amount of junk that I personally produce, right? But as a society, the kind of waste and the abuse of nature, it's a significant issue because God's creation is good and we are creation stewards. But before we get to that, it's about the most important thing that you are steward of is your own life. Right? It's your own life, and it's your own physical life as well. Right? It's what God has entrusted to you. And then it's your relationships. Certainly your relationship with God, right? Are we being good stewards of our relationship with God? Are we being good stewards of our relationship with other people? Right? Are we following Jesus in his now resurrection movement? Are we living life in the new age already? Unencumbered by sin and death. Right? Not even giving it a glance, not even giving sin and death a glance, but living now totally for God. Knowing that whatever happens as a result of our living totally for God, it's his plan. We don't have to be concerned about it. We don't have to be concerned about it at all. Because that's the life of the new age. And we want to be following the man who's at the head of that movement. And we want to be as close to him because we want to be pushing that movement as well as best we can, that resurrection movement, that world-changing movement. It's the only thing in the end that's going to change the world, is to follow Jesus. It's the only thing that's going to put the world right side up. The world's upside down. We all know it. It's the only thing that's going to put the world right side up, is following Jesus all the way to the end. And that's what we're called to do. Again, we're wearing red. Not just me, Martha also. But we're wearing red today for the martyrs, Marcellinus and Peter, right? We're pushing on because we know that that's the agenda. And if we're called to be martyrs, blessed are we, because it means that we would have risen to meet the stiffest challenge of all, to really lay it all on the line. But whatever it is, wherever we are today, we're called to do the same. Lay it all on the line for Jesus and his world-restoring mission. Again, my friends, one act of love at a time.